Let me introduce the speakers. We have Tarak Mehta, President, Electrification Business Area, ABB. Tarak has held several managerial positions within ABB since he joined in 98. Prior to joining ABB, he worked at Cooper Power Systems in the United States. Our next speaker is Vimal Kapur, President and CEO, Performance Materials and Technologies, Honeywell. Vimal previously served for 3 years as President and CEO of Honeywell's Building Technologies, and prior to his HBT leadership role, he served as President of Honeywell Process Solutions, where he led the business through an oil and gas downturn and positioned it to emerge as an even stronger competitor. The session is chaired by Vishal Mehta, Managing Director and Partner, Boston Consulting Group. Vishal is a co-member of the Strategy and Operations practice at BCG. He leads the energy practice in India and BCG's work on power and utilities in India and power generation operations work in Asia Pacific. Over to you, Vishal. Take it away.
Thank you, Shreya, for the introductions. Hi, Vimal. Hi, Tarak. I think looking forward to this exciting discussion. Before we start, I wanted to make a few points, and then let's take off from there. I think what I wanted to talk about today was what I call the troika, which is electrification, sustainability, and digital. Right? I mean, those are the three. I would say the mega trends which we look at. Our clients are talking about them. I'm sure you are seeing that in your business every day. So I think it'd be interesting to talk about these three things from your perspective. I would also add, in terms of the context, I work in the climate and sustainability space, and we are in this under this big suspense before November. What's Mr. Modi going to do? And I used to get questions from my colleagues across the world saying, "Do you have an insight into what's India going to announce?" And I said, "Look, I have absolutely no clue." I'm quite glad that we did announce a net zero target, which is a 2070 target. I don't know whether it's good, great, bad. I mean, at least there is a line that we have to chase. And it also believed that we've made, at least the narrative is that India has done a lot. I think I'd like to get your views on that as to what's been the progress so far and what do we need to do. So I think maybe let's just start off by by what do you think of India's targets, and what are the big pieces that we need to move to get to 2070 net zero. Tarak, you wanna start off over there?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's a pleasure to join the session today. From our perspective, being in the electrification business, it's very, very clear that in order to drive sustainability, it's the form of energy that will be the most used or will grow the most. And it's very clear from IEA that of all forms of energy, electricity will grow twice as fast as any other form of energy. The main reason for that is it enables the fastest penetration and growth of sustainable infrastructure plus also consumption. Just look at electric mobility. That is a good example of how we're removing a huge amount of emissions, making the world more sustainable, and driving through electricity a much cleaner, noise-free. For those of us who have been in India, in the middle of the crowded streets, you recognize, imagine all the trucks were electric. You could actually hear each other next to each other. You could actually understand and smell the food that you are seeing in the streets instead of smelling the diesel fumes that you normally do. So the world will change a lot. And a big part of that is driven by electrification, and sustainability is the puller to electrification in the world.
Tarak, give us a flavor on I hear these numbers and I always get confused, but it'll be good for the audience to. I mean, I hear India is at 17-18% electrification as part of the overall mix. Where is the world at, and how do you see, just for us to understand, where is this number and how is it likely to evolve?
I think the energy mix, just to give a perspective, electricity growth has been around GDP or give or take. a little bit slightly lower than GDP because of efficiency. If the world were to meet its 2050 targets, the energy mix would have to go well above 50% being electricity. So the energy mix is going to have to move dramatically to electricity in order for the efficiency and emissions reduction to happen. In the case of India, it's a long and far distant dream that the energy mix is going to be sustainable anytime soon. So therefore, the 2070 target, recognizing how much India has to do relative to other economies, some of the most advanced ones are also struggling. So this is not an easy solution. It's not only about shifting to electricity, it's also about the efficiency of energy consumption. And I just give you one example. Based on our estimates and calculations, India doesn't need to generate more electricity in the next 5 years or even 10 years. There is enough generation, but between generation and consumption, meaning your home, you lose between 20 and 30% of the energy that's generated. So if we can just make that efficient, that requires politicians not agreeing to give electricity for free. The farmers will have to pay for it instead of getting it for free. So this giving away for free creates a significant challenge in India for an incentive for the distribution utilities to actually earn money and have the capital to invest. So it's about efficiency as much as it is about generation. And that's a pretty important statistic for India.
Wow. And how does that compare to this generation to consumption? How does that compare to the rest of the world?
We're probably, it depends on which parts of the world. The most efficient right now is China because it has the most modern grid. It has the best capitalized asset structure you can imagine, and it's the most recent one. But you could cut our losses in half and we would still not be in India in the top quartile. So that gives you an idea how far away we are from efficiency of distribution of energy from generation to consumption. The good news is we can take the wireless approach in India. We never put in the landlines in India. If you remember, we just went straight to wireless. There is an opportunity in the energy mix to go straight to generating at source, at consumption, through renewable sources like solar, like wind. And those would give us an opportunity to get rid of what I would call inefficient infrastructure, but really have efficient infrastructure where the consumption is.
Fascinating. I mean, when I told one of my Chinese colleagues about the distribution loss number in India, I mean, he was just amazed. He said, but isn't distribution dominated by the government in India? I said, yeah. He said, how can government and stealing go together? So, that's
it's simple. It's called politics. It's called, going for the votes. That's what it's called, basically in India.
So we'll come back to that, the whole concept, the decentral, the wireless part. I think that's quite fascinating. But Vimal, coming to you, what do you think are the big pieces? I know you're quite passionate about the net zero journey or target that the country has taken. What do you think are the big pieces that need to be moved from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. In my view, the problem has to be kind of thought about in three independent buckets. The first one, which Tarak opened up around, how do we go to net zero? The second one, which is an important one, is we need to talk about circularity because there's a lot of waste, and the generating and managing waste, specifically plastic waste, is a big part of conversation which has to happen. And the third one is the point of efficiency, which Tarak made, goes beyond electrical infrastructure. It's a general sense of efficiency in everything we do. So I think efficiency means you consume less. Circularity means you waste less.
Yes.
And energy mix means you are finding a pathway to go to net zero. So there are three different problems, and we have to recognize that each one of them have to be attacked independently. Let me talk about net zero first. When net zero is a lot about changing the infrastructure to wind and solar or hydro, which are much more environmentally friendly, no emissions. And I think India is making a lot of progress, but we have to bear in mind that very large stock of our production today is coal-based thermal power plant. And are we going to retire them by 2070? Is that a feasible option? Or we need solution which is carbon capture solution from coal-based or gas-based power plants. We have to really think through that. There are already a lot of work being done to think about generating power through gas-fired turbines, which are practically emission-free versus a coal-fired. So how much of policy has to progress? And I know India doesn't have gas, so it's a challenge. So go back to the original problem. What do you want to do with a very large stock of coal-based power plants? So that's a big part of the puzzle. So while we add much more wind and solar, we cannot declare victory without saying, how do we take care of our current stock of thermal power plants? So then also we have to recognize that electricity can solve very large part of applications, but not all applications. There are, let's say you're producing steel, you're producing cement or refineries. They cannot be electrified. So you need alternative fuels there, which is hydrogen. So how the hydrogen economy will be built up, that's another part of the puzzle here. So it's a net zero puzzle, which is combination of generation strategy between wind, solar, and coal-based plant. And how does hydrogen gets inducted in the mix to make the whole... So where does India stand? I have seen a formal strategy document from many countries, which articulates how are they going to solve this puzzle, which is easier said than done. Tarak put it very well. This is extremely hard. So there's a country strategy on net zero document from UK. You can go to the website and download it. There's a similar policy document from United States on how they intend to do that, Australia. So all advanced economies are getting there, and I'm confident India will also slowly get it. It's a complex country with a lot of different background, and I think we have enough time to solve it, but we just need to get our mind into it. I mean, if you have 2 minutes, I can quickly add on circularity on efficiency part 2. I think on the circularity part, we have to put a serious effort on waste management, because waste management is again a complex topic. Western countries have done a great job of separating organic waste, plastic waste, turn the plastic waste into mechanical cycling. And I think we need to think very hard, how do we deal with plastic, which will keep growing in our life, because our life depends on plastics, and plastics are good. But plastic disposal is bad. You cannot throw it in the dustbin, you can't throw it in the drain or in the sea where it eventually lands. You just need to build a policy, and I think circularity is an important element of it. And finally, on the emission side, I think one thing we generally need a public education that emissions are much more than what we see. One big area where generally I see lack of awareness in broader Indian population is emission which come from refrigeration applications. We use refrigeration in our cars to make it cool. There's a refrigerator at our home. There's a deep freezer sitting in a retail store. The refrigerant used there is called hydrofluorocarbons. It's one of the most harmful gas for global warming. And there are policies in place in most advanced countries to eliminate it. And India has not adopted that yet. So that's invisible efficiency, which is polluting our environment. And I think we need to understand what can be done to advance those causes. So when you put it all together to the point that Tarak made and points I'm making, it's a complex topic which has to be appreciated, and a progression has to be made to adopt each of the steps around it.
There's good news to what you're saying. There is a silver lining. Our per capita energy consumption in India is very low relative to the advanced economies. So while they are worried about how to reduce the overall energy, here we have to just think about how do we as an economy on a per capita basis just consume half as much as we develop. Because India is going to develop among the fastest developing countries. And can we leapfrog through innovation, through our competence and capability, whether it's digital, whether it's IoT spaces? Can we use technology in a way to leapfrog? Like we have many, many examples in India. Like take the telecom example is a good one, where we have the cheapest rates in the most accessible information network in the world. In India, the question is turn this into energy efficiency. As you were saying, can we use this now to become more efficient? Can all those hundreds of millions of people get the messages to help them save energy instead of only advertising typically what they get? So this could be great opportunities for us to use technology.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think the world, all of this is a very complex problem. I mean, if you look at the, I've been in the, I would say the power and utility space for like, less than you guys, but 20 years still. And, it was fairly simple. You have a plant which can produce 24/7. You had a scarcity. So whatever you produce got consumed. I'm just saying it was not a great place to be in as a country, but both the network and the generation was fairly simple. Now as you are seeing different use cases for demand, you're going to add mobility. I know hydrogen is a different energy source, but at the end of the day, it's still electrification of the process. But the question is, when you have so much intermittency from generation, then I would say so much up and down on the demand side, and then you have all the other complexity of use cases. Then how do you bring in efficiency in such a system? I mean, and I would think technology definitely has a role to play, whether it is measurement, whether it is making complex algorithms. How do you think about that, Tarak?
I think I just give you a visual illustration. Whenever you think about Tokyo, you see that square with 7 intersections.
Yeah.
The visual image of Tokyo. That is what's going to happen to the electricity grid in your neighborhood. Today, it's a single lane highway, like you take between Bombay and Pune. It's exactly that. That is electricity today. And how the grid has to work. Tomorrow, it will be that 7, intersection, cross-section is what the grid will look like. That means the only hope we have is to digitize. The only hope we have to manage that complexity is to use technology to make sure you cannot put a traffic police in the middle of that intersection and say, now this part goes, that part goes. So you have to use advanced algorithms. And what the good news about all of this is India is blessed with sunlight. India is blessed with low consumption of energy per capita. When you combine that with technology, and when you combine that with a concept of complex grid that is controlled locally, you get rid of a lot of the political and a lot of the infrastructure problems with energy efficiency and distribution. So it is possible. We have done demos. We have done examples. We are doing a multiple grid in Austin, Texas, not too far from our colleagues here, sitting here from Honeywell, where we take part of the grid and make it smart. And then we connect it like Lego blocks. So you take a grid and you really do it as you would see on a piece of paper. And each block is able to talk to another block, and then you can optimize the block. And a block can be as small as a city block, and it can grow to the size of a city. So there are technologies that we're deploying these days that will enable the smarter grid, quote unquote, finally. But it's only possible, let me be very clear, if we can solve the storage problem. Hydrogen is a storage answer to a high energy consuming industry. The hydrogen is storage. So let's not fool ourselves. It's really a storage solution. And until we find a storage solution to electricity, which is there with the electric car, by the way, as soon as you can plug your car in, your motorcycle in, and consume the power from the motorcycle, from the car, you solve a significant challenge for the world in terms of going renewable and efficiency. And that will be enabled by technology, IoT, communication, digital means. That's how the world will really solve the problem of consumption, storage, generation, all within 300 meters of where you live. That's possible. And today we are deploying solutions to do that.
To build upon Tarak's point, I fully agree that I think between digital, I think in India has a benefit of sometimes not having something becomes an advantage. Yeah. So we don't have a very advanced grid infrastructure compared to most part of the world. Now, turning it upside down from a technology perspective, building microgrid is our advantage, because microgrid adoption as quickly as we can is going to offset some of the efficiency issues we have. And I'll give an example to colleagues here. One of our largest manufacturing facility in Phoenix, we are setting it up with a microgrid. So solar panels on the roof. Phoenix is a sunny place. We all know that. As much sun as we can get. So it's going to store all the energy. It's going to go to a battery storage system. And battery storage system is going to sync up with the grid in a manner that it mostly runs on a battery, but for some part, when the power is cheaper specifically, it charges itself. But net zero design in a microgrid environment in a very, very large manufacturing facility. And we'll have that up and running sometime later part of this year. But that's an example. India can easily adopt those technology examples. The battery storage technology is available today for that scale. Microgrid technology is available. But that's where the technology companies here in this event really have to think hard how they're going to step up their game and build an India-specific solution. Because microgrid is here to stay. And I'll envision that all large infrastructure, a large hospital complex, a large stadium, a very large campus of many companies should have a microgrid. Energy storage of that scale is available today and viable today. And some of us can step up and raise our hand at how we're going to set example of net zero facilities and move on with that.
I can give you an example to exactly what you said. In our Neelamangala facility of Bangalore, we have, as ABB, an exact example that you just mentioned in Phoenix, where we are running a facility with solar roof-mounted rooftop panels, including air conditioning of the office space, as well as the manufacturing space that's cooled. And that's not too far away. I mean, that's just the suburb of Bangalore. But it requires a corporate vision. It requires a commitment. It does require CapEx, but the returns are not as long as our CFOs would find uncomfortable. They are in a range which, if you stretch a little bit, it will fit within most companies' return on capital models. It might not be 2.3 years, let's be clear. But if you have the vision and if you have a growth of your business in mind, certainly planting a seed like that will really motivate the employees. Now we are on our year 3, and we're doing the same thing with water, not just with electricity. Now we are going to net zero water, meaning we will ensure that we don't consume water from the local sources as part of our processing of equipment and manufacturing and production technologies. So it's taking step-by-step an approach to emissions reduction, including effluent release of wastewater.
Actually, the water example is quite fascinating, and I'm just trying to just link a couple of conversations. I think at the heart of it is our ability to measure, whether it is emissions, whether it is consumption, whether it is water, whichever way, and then just put it out there. I think just the impact of seeing what you're consuming and ideally what you should be consuming has a big impact from an efficiency point of view. I don't know, Vimal, how you think about the role of data and transparency. But we've been this whole smart metering program, which has been being pushed in India, may not be in the most ideal way, but many of us are salivating at just the prospect of the amount of data that will get generated, which we can use. But I'm sure, closer to consumption, there are many other use cases of data which can drive efficiency and eventually sustainability.
Yeah, so I can give 2 examples. Go ahead, Tarak. Okay, so I can give 2 examples here. The first one is, I think the visibility point you make is very valid. One part of our Honeywell business is building automation, and all of us sitting in this call, in this event, have an office, have a building. And typically, we did not pay a lot of attention to efficiency of energy consumption in a building. HVAC system does consume a lot of energy by its design. And by making it visible using the cloud technology and then putting software to optimize it, it clearly has been a winner. Typically, 15 to 25% range energy savings are easily possible. So that's an example. Many companies are practicing it, and that's something we should seriously deploy. On the metering side, yeah, India is definitely behind in having smart metering infrastructure. But the earlier point which Tarak made, if we really want to give subsidy to a certain sectors in the economy which deserve that, you can link it with smart metering, because smart meter tells you you could encourage people to use efficient appliances in their home, and should their efficiency come down, you'll get subsidies. There's a risk reward model. If you do nothing, you will get nothing. So smart metering can enable you to do that because you exactly know the data. You could pattern the data to say, because you can have electricity patterns of a dishwasher to a washing machine to refrigerator, they all consume electricity in a different pattern. But if you use efficiently, you can reward them appropriately. So there, using data, using technology to progress the cause of efficiency is given. And there are lots of examples which are already occurring. And I'm sure India can take a leapfrog here and bring more and more technology in the footprint.
Let me give you an example. The coldest I have ever felt as a human being was in India. In one of these 18 degrees or 16 degrees cool air-conditioned room. What a waste of electricity. What a waste of energy. So when you fly into Mumbai or you fly into Calcutta, or you fly down, you see every single office building that's 5 stories and below. Pretty much, I can guarantee you, nobody is managing the temperature of that room that was set at 18 degrees after 9 o'clock at night. There is no reason for that room to be at 18 degrees. First of all, there is no reason for that room to be at 18 anyway. Yeah. But beyond that, and that is something which does not cost a fortune. The payback for that is less than 2 years, as you said. So we need to make sure as a team, as a leader of the business, that we actually mandate and insist that the temperatures are set reasonable. And then at 9 o'clock at night, the air conditioners are turned off. That refrigerant doesn't have a chance to leak out, even if it does leak because you don't use it. These simple things of turning things off, the lights off, the air conditioning off, can provide a very significant energy savings and a mix change for everybody. This is not an India issue, by the way. It's a global problem.
Yeah, I actually recall a fabulous campaign which was run in Mumbai, and it came out of a scarcity issue. There was obviously a scarcity of power, but you could not imagine a city like Mumbai having blackouts, right? So there was a campaign which the local utility ran saying keep your AC at 24. So at that time, if you looked outside, or there were posters, and everywhere it was 24. It just got drilled into everybody's mind that 24 is the. I mean, if you ask me, there was no reason for it to be 24 or whatever is the number, but it was just found that most people kept it much below that, and 24 would have been still okay, right? And it saved it saved a lot of money as well as power generation hassles for the utility, right? And for quite some time that actually had a big impact. I mean, I don't know if you. I mean, of course, you've lived. I've lived my childhood in India, so. The ACs did not have a digital display of the temperature.
No.
So, I mean, just having that display makes a big difference because, you've set it to a certain level, right? So I think quite fascinating. I just have one maybe quick fire round from, thoughts from both of you. I mean, I'm an optimist, and especially in India is a very entrepreneurial country. I mean, if you look at 2017 net zero as an opportunity, where new businesses will get created, new value pools will happen. I mean, back of the envelope, we did a study at BCG just very quickly after the announcement was made, and we thought there was about $7 to $10 trillion of investment required to get to that number, right? And this is assuming improvements in technology and prices will crash and all of that. It might be more than that if they don't. And we felt a large part of, if you're going to spend that much amount of money, you will definitely see new ventures, new kinds of businesses coming up, right? I mean, quick thoughts from you, what those businesses would be. I mean, it's the era of startups and unicorns in India. So
I personally think the microgrid piece, where private enterprises do not have to depend on government infrastructure vis-a-vis distribution companies to manage their consumption, storage, and use of energy, is a fantastic opportunity space. And companies that are focused on providing microgrid solutions for the private enterprises, the colleagues who are going to be watching us here, there will be people who will be able to support that infrastructure. We are one of them, but we are not the only ones as ABB. But those would be fantastic opportunities to kind of move forward. The other one is the use of the connected world. We don't always need sensors to understand what is the energy consumption pattern of a building. We can do a one-off measurement, and then we don't need continuous monitoring. We can get huge progress by just doing data mining using data that's available in the cloud. So this whole IoT space and being able to analyze the data, looking at the weather patterns, etc., and convert that into a recommendation engine that can then act on energy consuming resources would be another fantastic business area. And last but not least, I mean, there are two sources of energy consumption which are huge in any economy. One is mobility, and the other one is where we live, buildings. We need to attack both of those. If India goes electric on mobility, it's a monumental savings on emissions, not necessarily electricity, emissions. And last but not least, if we make our buildings more efficient, and that more efficient vis-a-vis building codes, minimum insulation standards, we can make a huge difference beyond what we have just talked about, which is control points, etc. So I see those two are big areas and big opportunities. And the societal pressure, let's not forget, India is a very close-knit society at a personal level, at a professional level. If we can use the social media to create the right incentives through technology, through incentives, through programs, it will go a long way in helping India achieve towards 2070. That's at least a few comments from myself.
Yeah, so I fully agree to every comment Tarak made. I think the microgrid is a huge opportunity. I would say broadly, efficiency-related solution, what we talked earlier. How do you make infrastructure efficient inherently, whether it's buildings or homes? That's a massive opportunity for entrepreneurship and new ideas. I would say a little bit on emissions, because we have to recognize the fact that emission monitoring is a critical element. Many companies are declaring net zero target, but increasingly regulators are going to ask for real-time data to support their claim. Because today we can say we're going to be net zero by 2035. So, but what's your baseline? It can't be a piece of calculation to say I calculated yesterday night. I think it's so much of CO2 emission. So there will be data and work required to prove the real-time baseline. And I think that is a empty space. There's an opportunity there from a sensing standpoint, which is more complex, but there's a much opportunity there on data capture, building compliance reports, building aggregation of data at enterprise level. A lot of large companies are claiming they already have carbon cloud and things of that nature. I probably would like to see one, but I think there is a vast opportunity for people to think about energy and emission. They are two interrelated topics. When you make it efficient, it emits less. But where the emissions are happening, you also want to measure it, because as Vishal, you mentioned, what you measure, you control. That's human nature. So that's another area. So I think there are ample opportunities on microgrid, energy efficiency, emission monitoring, and overall using data science for progression of this whole cause. There's a ton of opportunity here for the companies in India.
Fascinating. I mean, the whole list that both of you just talked about is so energizing. And, I'm personally quite, instead of trying to get to the next company which delivers my gulab jamun 10 minutes faster, I'm sure that we can do much better on some of the more fundamental problems that we need to solve, right? I mean, I would love to chat longer with both of you, but I think we're close to end of time. I mean, I personally enjoyed this quite a lot, and I'm sure the audience did as well. It was fascinating talking to both of you, just understanding, electrification, sustainability, technology, and the role that they will play in the decades ahead, or as they call it, the decade ahead of us. So thanks for spending time on this and for a lovely session. Right, back to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Vishal, Vimal, and Tarak. Simple solutions to complex problems. Electrification, sustainability, and digital, the three mega trends that everyone's talking about. The sustainability related problem definitely needs to be thought about in three independent buckets: net zero, circularity, and the efficiency beyond electrification. And even though India is making a lot of progress, we need to definitely bear in mind that a very large stock of our production today is coal-based thermal plants. Hence, technology is going to play a very big role in this transition. We've had polls at regular intervals during this conference to quiz up and quip up your interest.